And welcome to another episode of Random Thoughts. I'm your host, Steve Mills, and thanks to the both of you for listening. Also, thanks for all of the encouraging messages and emails that I receive for the shows that we put out. This is purely educational. It's so that you know what's happening around you. We've been talking a whole lot about Donald Trump and the government shutdown, and I got to tell you, we're at a point in this government shutdown where, it's like, where do we go? What do we do? Day number 30 of the government shutdown. Let's take a look at what day 29 of the government shutdown looked like.
Breaking political headline on this, the 29th day of the long government standoff. President Trump proposing a new offer to Democrats involving temporary considerations for DACA recipients in exchange for billions for his border wall. Democrats taking no time to strike back, with House Speaker Nancy Pelosi calling the proposal a non-starter, renewing calls for the president to open up the government first. ABC's David Wright is at the White House.
Tonight, nearly 1 month into the shutdown, the president finally changed his bargaining position.
Straightforward, fair, reasonable, and common sense, with lots of compromise.
From the diplomatic room at the White House, he offered Democrats some things they want in exchange for the $5.7 billion he wants to build his border wall.
This is not a 2,000-mile concrete structure from sea to sea. These are steel barriers in high-priority locations. A steel barrier will help us stop illegal immigration while safely directing commerce to our lawful ports of entry.
In exchange, President Trump agreed to extend work authorizations and other protections for 3 years for so-called dreamers, undocumented immigrants brought into the U.S. as children.
This extension will give them access to work permits, Social Security numbers, and protection from deportation, most importantly.
The president also proposed extending temporary protected status for some 300,000 others, but offered no pathway to citizenship beyond that. Speaker Nancy Pelosi called it a non-starter, having said in the past that the Dreamers and the border wall should not be linked.
Well, because they're two different subjects.
The Democrats are reportedly ready to sweeten their offer, including $1 billion for border-related measures and no money for Trump's wall, which Pelosi has called immoral.
Walls are not immoral. In fact, they are the opposite of immoral because they will save many lives.
The president said today that Senate Republicans will put his proposal to a vote first thing next week, but it's not clear that Mitch McConnell even has enough votes to start debate. The Democrats, meanwhile, are digging in their heels. Their message to the president is that the only way to move forward is to reopen the government. Tom?
No end in sight, at least for tonight. All right, David, thank you.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.
And, of course, the GOP has their spin on the entire situation.
A political game of chicken unfolding in Washington between President Trump and Nancy Pelosi, beginning with the House Speaker's request to put the whole State of the Union address on hold until after the government shutdown. Pelosi sending this note to the president: sadly, given the security concerns, and unless the government reopens this week, I suggest that we work together to determine another suitable date after government has reopened for this address, or for you to consider delivering your State of the Union address in writing to Congress on January 29th. Now, the mainstream media praising Pelosi's quote-unquote power play.
Speaker Pelosi playing hardball.
She's playing hardball.
Speaker Pelosi flexing her constitutional muscle.
Nancy Pelosi flexing her muscles today.
This bold power play by Speaker Pelosi.
She's got a PhD in needling President Trump.
This is a move of exceptional cleverness and sadism in a way.
I mean, this is political genius.
She was showing that she's in charge. What a badass.
But a different story when the president did virtually the same thing. Mr. Trump pulling the plug on Pelosi's planned overseas trip using a government-funded military aircraft. He said no. The president writing, I am sure you would agree that postponing this public relations event is totally appropriate. It would be better if you were in Washington negotiating with me. If you would like to make your journey by flying commercial, that would certainly be your prerogative. Now, with the trip off, congressional lawmakers were left sitting on a bus, which eventually returned to the Capitol. There's the luggage, dropped off neatly. And here's how the media reacted to that.
The president has responded in sort of a childish way, is the only way to describe it, to the House Speaker Nancy Pelosi.
This is a sort of a classic example of Trump kind of overreacting.
What Trump has done today, tactically inept, strategically nitwitted.
The only phrase that comes to mind is nanny, nanny, boo-boo.
Nobody who's ever traveled with a congressional delegation would think that this is funny or appropriate or cool.
Not cool. Here to respond, White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders. Sarah, welcome to Water's World.
Thanks, Jesse. It's good to be with you.
As always, the base is extremely pumped up about Trump's move with the plane. That's definitely gotten everybody excited. We now realize how intense this is. But now Nancy's team is saying that her safety was jeopardized because the White House leaked her travel plans. You care to respond to that?
Look, that's outrageous. Nobody in this building is going to do anything to put the safety and security of any American, particularly those in service, like Speaker Pelosi, in any type of danger. The idea that we leaked her commercial travel is absolutely absurd, and frankly, it's just dishonest. And any of these mainstream media folks that are praising the so-called power move by Nancy Pelosi, there's nothing powerful about the Speaker of the House questioning the ability of the United States Secret Service, who have said they have no problem protecting the president. Let's be real clear. The Secret Service protected the president when he was in Iraq. I'm pretty sure they can handle the job on Capitol Hill. I think, frankly, it is shameful and unbecoming of the Speaker to pull the action that she did in regards to questioning the United States Secret Service.
Now, where do we stand with the State of the Union, in your opinion? Is the president looking for other venues, a big rally, the Senate, or is he still planning on doing it in Congress?
Look, we'll keep you posted on the details. What I can tell you is the president's going to continue to do what he's done every day since taking office, and even before that, and that's communicating directly with the American people, whether it's through the State of the Union, whether it's through a rally, whether it's through taking questions from the press, whether it's through speeches across the country, whether it's through Twitter and other means of social media. The president's going to continue to get his message out, and that message is we have to protect our country, we have to protect our borders, and Nancy Pelosi needs to get serious about working with the president to see that get done.
Some of that message may be working. In the latest NPR poll, the president's approval rating among Latino adults is up 19 points. And if you listen to the Democrats on tape, they seem to be cracking a little bit when it comes to calling the wall immoral and ineffective. Let's listen and you can respond.
I don't think this is an issue of morality. It's an issue of does it work? A wall that protects people is not immoral.
Would you remove those existing barriers because you say they don't work?
No, no.
So they work there. So they work some places.
Obviously they work some places.
Do walls work? Do barriers work?
In certain places, I think so.
Then we can talk about the best way forward on border security, and if that's a wall, then I'm open to that.
So Democrats, I mean, the leadership says one thing, other leaders in the Democratic Party say another thing. I don't know where they stand on walls and barriers. Do you?
I don't, and that's partly because they refuse to sit down at the table and have the conversation with the president. Nancy Pelosi is too busy taking vacations in Hawaii. Her team is going to Puerto Rico doing cocktail parties and Broadway shows. They need to be sitting down at the table with the president. They need to figure out how to open the government and protect our borders. We've laid out a plan. It's time for them to sit down and negotiate and work out a deal so that we actually are solving problems, not just playing political games. It's clear that Democrats believe believe that we need border security. You just played a number of them saying exactly that. We're hopeful that some of those people will come to the table, work with the president, and get this deal done, even if Nancy Pelosi won't.
All right, Sarah, thank you very much.
So there you have it, the GOP spin on what's going on. Of course, Sarah Huckabee Sanders says it's absurd that anybody would ever think that they leaked the commercial travel plans of Nancy Pelosi and her team. But then in another breath, she said, oh, they're going to Puerto Rico and taking vacations in Hawaii and having cocktail parties. So how am I to believe that she didn't indeed, or that someone on their staff didn't leak that information? And then, of course, the president sent in the letter. Now, of course, you know, Nancy Pelosi did say, hey, maybe we should postpone the State of the Union until after we have an agreement, which includes this wall and DACA and some other things. And then, of course, Donald Trump came back to her with, sorry, Nancy, travel is canceled. Can't travel right now because you should be here in Washington working this out with me. So, deal or no deal? Looks like no deal to me.
Down over? Is the wall coming? I'm going to get right to the deal tonight. To quote Frank Costanza, this isn't my kind of deal. That's right, Trump's salvo to Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi is hardly a deal at all. Here's why. For one, it still includes $5.7 billion in funding for a wall Pelosi has said, again today, she will not consider. For another, it doesn't reopen the government. Democrats have also been clear they won't negotiate an immigration deal while the government is shut down. Then there's the DACA element. Democrats and even Trump himself have previously moved away from a temporary extension of protection for DACA recipients because that very issue has moved into the court system. But the real reason this deal is no deal, it comes at the end of a very bad week for the president. As the very real shutdown effects come into sharp focus and the White House struggles to spin this in their favor, this deal seems more like a distraction and less like a real solution. Just look at the president's very bad week. There were those shutdown polls, all of them, which showed Americans place the blame for the government shutdown squarely on the shoulders of President Trump. These are just 4 of the polls. It was also a week of terrible optics and terrible pain. The U.S. Coast Guard became the first branch of the military to go without pay as a result of a government shutdown. More than 40,000 members of that service branch got no paycheck on Friday. Some were told to hold garage sales to make some extra cash. The Coast Guard also accepted a donation from USAA to assist service members in need. What a disgrace to our men and women in uniform. There was also that cringeworthy tit-for-tat between the president and Pelosi that began with Pelosi's State of the Union gimmick, suggesting Trump submitted in writing over so-called security concerns. Now, instead of leaving that to ratio on Twitter, though, the president matched it with a cancellation of Pelosi's overseas congressional delegation to Brussels, Egypt, and Afghanistan, drawing the ire of many, including Republicans like Trump wingman Senator Lindsey Graham, who tweeted, "One sophomoric response does not deserve another." Finally, of course, the president had Rudy Giuliani to contend with. His eyebrow-raising interview with our Chris Cuomo on Wednesday, in which the lawyer lied and said he never said the Trump campaign hadn't colluded with Russians, surely didn't do the president any favors. So will this non-deal turn the tide? Let me ask a Democratic lawmaker, Connecticut Congressman Jim Himes. Welcome.
Thanks, Essie.
Okay, so was this deal to Democrats, which includes the whole funding for the wall, was it a non-starter?
It is a non-starter, but let's step away because I think there's some good news to be gleaned from this. And that is that there is a negotiation going on. And remember, I'm not usually in the habit of praising the president, but remember, we've come a long way from a 30-foot beautiful solid wall from sea to shining sea that the Mexicans would pay for.
Right.
That's obviously an absurd starting point, and we're not there. Now, particularly the DACA provisions, the wall is problematic, but remember he said, you know, now we've gotten away from a wall to steel slats. If you actually go to San Diego or El Paso, you'll see that we have steel slat barriers. So my point is that yeah, it's a non-starter, you know, chiefly amongst, you know, the DACA recipients.
Right.
You know, to say to these young people, you've been living a hell of of uncertainty for 2 years, and now you get certainty for 3 more years. That's a non-starter. Now, of course, the big problem here is, and this is something that is not a Democratic thing or a Trump thing or an anti-Trump thing. You can't negotiate when the president says, or anybody says, I'm only going to negotiate as long as 800,000 people are up in the air about whether they're going to be able to put food on the table, Coast Guard not getting paid. Nobody can use that as a tool. And the president said, I would be proud to shut down the government. He has. That needs to turn around.
So the nuts and bolts of the deal, non-starter, but you heard in his speech maybe some openings for give and take. Do you think that Democrats risk seeming petulant if they don't at least appear to consider this deal?
Yeah, look, you know, I've been in a lot of negotiations. We've all been in a lot of negotiations. Until you reach a deal, the deal is not acceptable. And again, I give the president credit for coming off the Mexican paid for a wall, you know, across the entire border. So he has moved. The problem is, and again, this is important to the country. And I tell my Republican colleagues, you know, there will be a Democratic president someday. And you don't want the Democratic president saying, I'm not going to pay our soldiers and our sailors until you give me legalized marijuana or single payer health care. Let's take that as a policy tool off the table. And then, you know what? I think the president needs to come some way on DACA and on the wall. But we're having a conversation. We're having a negotiation. That's a good thing.
Let's talk about DACA. You mentioned that the 3-year temporary salve is a non-starter. DACA was a very urgent issue for a lot of Democrats a couple of years ago. Do you feel like it's not as urgent now that you can take this pause, not accept a 3-year temporary fix? Do you have some more room that you didn't think you had a few years ago?
Well, the good news is that the courts have basically put the Dreamers into suspended animation. Now, I say that's good news because they're not being sent to countries that they would not even remember. It's not good news in the sense that if you're a young person with a law degree, but you're a dreamer, you know, you wonder whether that's going to be true tomorrow and the next day. That's just a degree of uncertainty that nobody should have to live with. So, look, at the end of the day, the deal for the Dreamers is going to need to permanently normalize their status. And that's where we're going to, and you know, again, that's not a Democratic thing. You've met these young people. Of course. They're energetic. They want to contribute to the country. They don't know, in many cases, the countries that they came from. A permanent solution for them is essential.
I know. Many DACA recipients very well, very intimately. And you're absolutely right about that. So Democrats are reportedly set to add more money to a number of spending bills that the House is going to consider next week, including $524 million to improve ports of entry in California and Arizona, and another $563 million to hire more immigration judges. Pelosi has said there will be no negotiating on the border while the government is shut down. Is that, though, something of a negotiation, sort of sweetening the pot?
Well, again, I mean, not to beat a dead horse, but we have to accept, I've been doing this for a while, I've seen 3 government shutdowns. We have to, for once and for all, say you can't get petulant as a president, as a senator, as a congressman, and say, if you don't repeal the Affordable Care Act, I'm shutting down the government. If you don't give me my wall, I'm shutting down the government. Again, this is a symmetrical thing. There will be Democrats who, if the president succeeds, someday, maybe soon, say, well, that looks like a pretty good weapon. I'm going to use it too, and that's just not the way we should run a government.
So you seem actually somewhat optimistic about this getting resolved soon.
Well, my optimism stems from the fact that we are now talking about, is it DACA for 3 years or is it DACA permanent? You know, is it money for more lawyers, for more judges? Is it technology? We're a long way from a 30-foot solid wall from the Pacific to the Caribbean. So there has been motion. And look, I think if the president, I understand the president has to play to his base, but if the president can just say, we're going to reopen this government, we're going to start paying the people who are hungry tonight, you would find that the Democrats would be very happy to enter into a negotiation and let the legislative process work its will.
All of this for a 30-foot tall wall, 2,000 miles in length. Cost-cutting measures. Coast Guard not getting paid on Friday. That's big. How long before the Air Force and the Army and the Navy, the Marines, how long before they don't get paid? But they're expected to continue to protect the country How about those other federal workers that are not being paid right now, or the ones that are sitting home because they were furloughed, can't afford to pay for food, can't afford to pay their rent, have been told to have garage sales. Oh, and we can't forget, those that that would be able to qualify for food stamps and other SNAP benefits because they're not working, but they're not going to release those benefits either come the 1st of February as long as we're still in a government shutdown. Donald Trump definitely doing a good job of saving money in the way of providing not so eloquent food to my father's alma mater, and of course, man, so disrespectful. He worked there. He retired from there as a professor of African American Studies. Passed away in 2014, Clemson University. Now, this is going to be the GOP spin on the fast food, and oh yeah, this is what they wanted. But come on, man, really? Do you give fast food to a bunch of highly overachieving college students who are coming to visit the president, whether they requested or not? I mean, come on, man, for real?
Just another slow week in Trumpville. Let's start with the meal that made the media squeal.
We have pizzas, we have 300 hamburgers, many French fries.
Many French fries. That seems like a year ago. But the media lost their lunch over this and raged at Trump for serving food everyone on earth loves to eat. Think about it. How many times have you had to go to some formal event and plan what you're going to eat after you eat? Because the first dinner sucks. It's always like some tiny bird on a plate, all bones and veins. It's like you're eating an old lady's fist. Trump's been there many times. He thought, hey, what would I eat after I ate? Of course, burgers, pizza. It's what we all want. Yet people lost their minds. Mainly over this.
Do we have no food for you because we have a shutdown? Or do we give you some little quick salads that the First Lady will make along with the Second Lady? They'll make some salads. And I said, you guys aren't into salads.
It's true. Nobody is into salads. Nobody. I mean, has anyone ever on death row ever asked for their last meal to be a chef salad? It's always burgers and pizza, making it the gold standard for everyone. But CNN went for the sexist angle.
That's appalling. It seems to me like the president will not be happy until there is not one single female Republican voter in the country. It's incredibly sexist. We aren't all here to make salads for men.
This is one of those things where sometimes what people say when they're being funny exposes exactly who they are and what they think.
But wait, aren't they the ones conflating gender with salad? I'll have you know, ladies, I make a mean salad. Lettuce, tomatoes, onions. Of course it's on top of a burger, but it's a salad, you pathetic sexist. Disgusting.
And of course, he's an idiot. But I wanted to show you, more than anything, the food situation. Totally disgusting that he would bring fast food and lots of French fries and that type of a thing. Well, his days are coming to an end. And there is something that, of course, we can do about it. I'm just going to throw this in there. rockthevote2020.org. Make sure you make your way over to that website. You check that out. You put your information in, and then we'll keep you emailed on the things that we're going to do. But we're going to make some change for this country. We're going to make sure that there's not going to be any pollution, per se, in the next election. Doesn't matter what anybody says. We know that there's something that they are hiding. They're hiding something. They don't want us to know something. I think that's why the president's doing a very good job of covering all of his tracks. And there are a lot of people that are telling a lot of fibs that aren't 100% true. And at least one person has picked up on that. a gentleman, a millionaire, a billionaire actually, is out on a mission. And the mission is very simple. Impeach Donald Trump. Tom Steyer, let's check him out.
Become perhaps the loudest voice calling for impeachment. The Constitution sets the grounds for impeachment as treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. Which has the president violated?
Good morning, Dana. I would say it's clear that he has violated the Constitution in the sense that he has violated his trust with the American people through obstructing justice by firing the head of the FBI, Mr. Comey, for what he said explicitly was over the Russian investigation. He has been taking, in contradiction of the emoluments clause, he has been taking payments from foreign governments almost since the very first day that he took office. I don't think there's any question that he has, in fact, met that standard for impeachment, but I think the important thing is not just that he's met the standard, but it's very important and urgent that we get him out of office.
But the special counsel, Robert Mueller, and multiple congressional committees are in the middle of their investigations, I should say, that President Trump calls a witch hunt. Aren't you playing into the president's message by calling for impeachment even before these investigations are complete?
As I said, an impeachment is actually a process where the House puts him up for a trial in the Senate. So, in fact, to have him impeached merely means that in a public way, the Senate goes through all of the evidence right in front of the American people. And the fact of the matter is, we know from what he's said publicly that he has violated the Constitution and is subject to impeachment. There will be, inevitably, we're in favor of the Mueller investigation. God bless him for what he's doing. But the fact of the matter is, this president has performed in a lawless way throughout the campaign and throughout his presidency, and he is an urgent threat to the American people. So to sit here and wait, doing absolutely nothing, is the wrong thing to do. The American people want this man impeached.
I want to read to you what President Obama's former chief strategist, David Axelrod, tweeted. He said the following. He said, Steyer impeachment ads seem to be more of a vanity project than a call to action. It is at least this point an unhelpful message. If impeachment becomes a political tool, it will be as damaging to our democracy as the degradations Donald Trump has inflicted on it. Your face is front and center in these ads. What some of your fellow Democrats are saying, as you just heard, is that you're using the specter of impeachment to build your own political brand. Your response?
I think that the people in Washington, D.C. and the political establishment can't accept the idea that the American people are supposed to have their own voice. And what we're doing is providing a venue for Americans to add their voices together to change the conversation, the dysfunctional conversation in Washington, D.C. That's what we're doing.
And, of course, that was just a little bit from Tom Steyer. Of course, Tom Steyer is on a mission to get President Trump impeached. Do I know if that's the answer? I'm sure that a lot of Dems and some Republicans would like to see that be the answer. I don't know if that is the answer, though. I mean, I think that we could all work together. I just don't think that the approaches that each other's taking, that each side is taking, are perhaps the appropriate ways to handle the things that we're trying to handle. Of course, you know, Nancy Pelosi did say, hey, let's postpone the State of the Union until we have some type of a more solid ground as far as where we're going with the border wall. And, of course, Donald Trump had a nice response for her. Check this out.
Democrats grounded, boarded on this bus, but going nowhere. Less than an hour before Nancy Pelosi and others were set to begin a planned trip overseas, including a secret stop in Afghanistan.
We're going to Afghanistan.
President Trump writing the House Speaker, "I'm sorry to inform you that your trip has been postponed," calling it a public relations event, arguing the top Democrats should stay in Washington negotiating with me. The president's move apparent payback for Pelosi's call to postpone the State of the Union address until after the government reopens. Democrats fuming.
I think the actions of the president were petty, mean-spirited, and beneath any president of the United States to take.
The president.
We weren't going to go because we had a report from Afghanistan that the president outing our trip had made the scene on the ground much more dangerous. And so we're saying, well, it's not only about our safety, that's one thing, but the more important thing is the people whom we would be meeting with, the civilians, they're our own troops, first and foremost. Again, they take so many risks for us. We didn't want to heighten the risk for them. So then we're going commercially, then we say, okay, well, let's review this in light of the State Department's report that the president's statement has heightened the danger on the ground. As we're making that decision, all of us together, then the State Department doubles down and says, we don't think you should come because the president's statement has made this worse. So it's very irresponsible on the part of the president. We'll go again. We'll go another time. This would have been my 9th trip. One of my colleagues, it was his 15th trip. We've been many times to see what the needs are of our men and women in uniform, honor those needs, and thank those troops.
Do you view this as retaliation for your letter about the State of the Union?
I would hope not. I don't think the president would be that petty, do you?
And of course, that was Nancy Pelosi's response to President Donald Trump grounding them, essentially, putting them in a bus and making them sit. It's kind of like, look, we're going to figure this out one way or the other. Well, Saturday Night Live definitely had some fun with this the other night.
No deal.
Yeah, nobody's excited about that playoff.
I want $5 billion from my border wall, and in exchange, I'll extend DACA, and I'll release the kids from cages so they can be free-range kids.
That is our plan. Border security, DACA, TPS, and many other things. Straightforward, fair, reasonable, and common sense.
Nancy.
Okay. $1 billion and you say Nancy's my mommy. No, Chuck, we're not doing that anymore. Remember, we're not caving in.
Oh, right. Yeah, projecting strength. Okay, let me put on my fiery red cheetahs.
No, Mitch. You can't just disappear in the middle of this.
Well, just a reminder, I can now subpoena your tax returns whenever I want.
It's cold out here, and the temperature wasn't much warmer in the Situation Room. Our meeting did not last long.
Every time you choose no deal, 500,000 federal employees work another day without getting paid.
Cool story, bro. No deal.
Oh, man. Well, speaking of getting paid, I need to thank our sponsors tonight. Green beef. Yeah, it shouldn't be green, but ain't nobody at the FDA to inspect it. And old lady in an inner tube way out in the ocean. Yeah, the Coast Guard will be back soon. Hang in there, Beth. Okay, you know what? This government gonna be shut down for like a year. Let's take a quick break.
No, wait. I want to open that case from the Clemson football player.
Okay, that's not a briefcase. That is a Crave case from White Castle.
But I'll bet you as much food as we have pizzas, we have 300 hamburgers, many French fries, all of our favorite foods. I want to see what's here when we leave, because I don't think it's going to be much. The reason we did this is because of the shutdown.
Hamburgers. Yeah. Oh, Steve, I haven't eaten a hamburger in almost 15 minutes. I'm going to make that deal.
Wait, you ending the shutdown for a hamburger? Well, I guess that makes as much sense as anything else that's going on these days. And live from New York, it's Saturday Night.
The reason they did it was because of the shutdown. The hamburgers, the French fries, I just still can't get over that. I cannot get over it. But the one thing is maybe Cardi B was right after all.
Trump taking away Speaker Pelosi's airplane. Trump telling her he's postponing her trip on this military jet scheduled for Brussels and Afghanistan because of the shutdown. And then he adds she could fly commercial if she wants, or maybe not, into a war zone. This, of course, is a response to Pelosi, who said she would reschedule his State of the Union. Now, today, all of this pettiness back and forth, more shade at the man accused of often stiffing his own employees.
I'm not denying the platform at all. We're saying let's get a date when government is open. Let's pay the employees. Maybe he thinks it's okay not to pay people who do work. I don't. And my caucus doesn't either.
Trump recently tells aides, though, that, quote, we're getting crushed on this shutdown. The polls show some of that. Trump's overall approval rating is now down 7 points in the past month. Even worse with his base. 10 points down among Republicans, 7 among white men without college degrees, down 18 points among suburban men, and down another 24 points among white women without college degrees. Gallup notes Donald Trump is now the first president in history to never reach any majority approval, not for a single day, during his first 2 years in office. With me now, former U.S. Senator Robert Torricelli. He served during 5 government shutdowns, including 1996, which had been the longest. That's a Trump record, as well as the whole unpopularity thing. Fordham University professor Christina Greer joins me as well. What do you think of what I think you have to admit, even though I know that you are supportive of some of what Speaker Pelosi does, what do you think of this increasingly petty part of the spat?
Is it petty, though? I
mean, it's petty.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think Nancy Pelosi is trying to make the argument that, you know, we've got 800,000 federal employees, to say nothing of the hundreds of thousands of other Americans who are out of work because of the shutdown. And this president needs to read the Constitution, in which it says that he must, you know, present to the American public his agenda. But she's saying, you know, for either national security reasons or the fact that we are in the middle of a shutdown, he needs to either wrap this up, talk to Mitch McConnell, since Mitch McConnell could end this shutdown if he wanted to.
Or he could hold votes.
Yeah, he could do his job. How about that? Right? He could do the thing that we're paying him to do. And so I don't think it's actually petty. I think it's part of a much more larger conversation Nancy Pelosi's trying to force the president to have, since he didn't get his money for his wall when he had 2 years of unified government.
Senator, when you served in the Senate, there would be votes from time to time on these sort of matters to reopen the government.
What I don't understand about this is why no one's coming up with creative ideas. I mean, I've seen these kind of intractable problems we had with Reagan, with Social Security funding. We had it with interarranged nuclear weapons. We had it with the budget problems with Gingrich, which led to the previous. But everyone is just taking their positions, and it appears to me they're hardening their positions.
Yeah, it's getting harsher, for sure.
And since it's never going to come from Trump, I am kind of surprised that Nancy Pelosi and Chuck are not throwing out there more creative solutions to try to get past this. And leadership's not going to come from the White House.
And the pressure on Trump, though, does appear to be having an impact. It's widespread as the shutdown grinds on. Senator, you represented New Jersey. I want to play someone who represents the Bronx. Cardi B weighing in on this Trump shutdown. Take a look.
Trump is now ordering, as in summoning, federal government workers to go back to work without getting paid. Our country is in a hellhole right now. Oh, wall. Like, we really need to take this serious. I feel like we need to take some action.
Is she right?
Well, of course, I was going to say the exact same thing.
The same way.
Same way. She is right that I think most Americans are sitting back right now saying this isn't just a problem over an issue, it's a problem of the governance of the country. One thing that I think Donald Trump is going to understand and why these numbers are falling is most Americans don't look that there's 3 branches of government. When the government's not functioning, there is a president, and the president is responsible for making the government function. They don't look at it as you and I might with these co-equal branches.
Right, and that goes to Mitch McConnell, which you raised earlier. Putting aside what one thinks about, I'll cancel your speech, I'll cancel your plane, okay, we're in the cancel wars.
Earrings off.
Here we go. One of the star new members of Congress, Congresswoman AOC, as she's often called, is out there leading the charge. Also the Bronx. Here we go. It's a Bronx night. Also leading the charge, though, and saying, look, this isn't just Donald Trump again. This is Senator Mitch McConnell. The Democrats arguing he's MIA. Let's take a look at that for your analysis. Here we go.
We're here doing our jobs. We have voted repeatedly, over and over again, to reopen the government. He's not in the cloakroom. He's not in the Capitol. He's not in the Russell Building. He's not in the floor of the Senate. And 800,000 people don't have their paychecks. So where's Mitch?
She's demystifying the process for the American public. So many Americans are saying, okay, it's the president's fault, which it is. But Mitch McConnell has really been the gatekeeper on this. So what Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez is saying, it's like, listen, Mitch McConnell, you could do your job and bring your colleagues to the table and vote, and so we could actually jumpstart the government. Mitch McConnell hasn't done that because he also knows that the vast majority of people don't know that that's what he's supposed to do.
Well, that's such an important point, and that you have new blood, new members, all this energy, and we have more of that later tonight, telling people how it works, because if you're in charge, why are you hiding? If this vote was good enough before the government shut down, why isn't it good enough now? And are you really majority leader if you're not running this like cardio?
Well, and it's evidence that this is really Trump's party. That these Republican senators know better.
Right,
they are scared to death of primaries.
Yeah.
They're not going to get on the other side of Donald Trump on this.
And that's, I think, a point. I said some things we disagreed about the petty thing, but I think we can all agree the Senate does not report to the president. It's supposed to hold its own votes. And as the government stays closed, I think that is going to stay important as people see that. I got to fit in a break. Senator Torricelli, Christina Greer on a Bronx night.
Apparently.
You're a Queens girl. All right. Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.
So what are we going to do about it? We got a pretty serious situation, 800,000 people without paychecks, SNAP benefits not going to come. And, of course, there are some other people that are affected. I mean, there are some aerospace people that are going to be affected by this shortly because without the government contracts, there's no work. Think about anything that has to do with government and know that a federal shutdown can lead to things happening at the state and even the municipalities that depend on state and federal support. So we're in day 30, day 31 almost of this government shutdown. Actually, we are in day 31, and still no resolution. What are we going to do? Well, what we can do is this. Handling Your Tomorrows Today is a nonprofit that is committed to teaching people how to vote. RockTheVote2020.org, that's where you want to go. Make sure you put your information there into the computer, and as we get the information that we want to share, such as where we're going to be, talking to people about voting, showing people how to vote, and bringing a presentation that is unmatchable, as we do have some partners that are working with us to make this a reality, I think you'll find that we'll accomplish what it is we're trying to accomplish, and that is just simply this. It's not having a situation where we have people that use tools such as shutting down the country to, get their point across. I mean, it's a big crybaby move is what it is. $57 million or else, $57 billion or else the country remains shut down and nobody gets paid. I mean, come on. Is that like realistic or what? It isn't. So we need to make sure that we're teaching the millennials. We need to make sure that we're teaching that 40% of people that were able to vote that didn't vote to vote so that we can avoid situations like this again. RockTheVote2020.org. Make sure you go there, put your email in, and we'll keep you posted as to how we're going to do this. And I want to thank you so much for spending time with us and, just really getting a grasp of the situation. I mean, you've got to really have a grasp. If you don't, we're in a lot of trouble. And as every day goes by, it's another day that there's not a bill getting paid. It's another day that somebody else is thinking, what do I have to do to get the money to pay my bills? I mean, it could be a detriment to somebody, Hey, this person has money and I don't. I need to pay my bills. What can I barter to them to pay my bills? You just follow that and know that that could be your daughter or your son or a relative. because this country is shut down and things aren't working right. Longest government shutdown in history. We're quickly approaching that. Actually, we're there. So just definitely think about what you want in 2020 and make your way to rockthevote2020.org. Make sure you share that website with everybody, and we'll do our best to make sure that this doesn't happen in the year 2020. You have been listening to Random Thoughts. I'm your host, Steve Mills, and thanks to the both of you for listening. It's been a fantastic. Of course, we try to do this a couple times a week and do this via Facebook Watch Party. We throw it out on YouTube and Vimeo and some other places just so that people have the tools and the knowledge, the things that are happening around them they know about, and then we can figure out a solution to move forward. In closing, my heart is heavy. I think that we can get past this, but it's going to take a lot of work. And in the meantime, we have to prepare for what could happen. I mean, our country could be shut down for another month. And then what happens? Do we really want to find out? Didn't think so. rockthevote2020.org. Let's make sure that we check that out today. And you have a great day.